Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hi, everybody. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Del and Debbie's Mind, Body, Soul. We are the show that's invigorating talk on everything that has to do with health and well-being. I'm just Debbie. I'm here because Del is in the hot seat today. We're doing some trading places that we've been doing lately with our show. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and then I'm going to introduce what Del does, and then we're going to talk about the subject that we're going to put Del on the spot with today. So I am one of your co-hosts. I am Debbie Carlin Boyle, and I am certified as a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and an integrative nutrition, health, and wellness coach. And I work with clients and people in general to help them find balance in their life with everything that feeds us, in addition to the food on our plate. And my wonderful, wonderful co-host is Del Adey-Jones. And Del is a certified transformational coach. She's also a 3 principles teacher and practitioner. And Del helps her clients achieve psychological well-being in all areas of their lives, regardless of their external circumstances. Now, for our show today, we are an interactive show, so we want you to get involved if you can. You can go to our Facebook page, Del and Debbie, Mind, Body, Soul. You can make a comment, ask a question. We keep it up during the show, so we try to refer to it, and we can get back to you. You can also call in to us at 323-284-7826 and ask Del a question or make a comment during the show. So today, we are going to talk about what Del is a practitioner of, which is the 3 principles. But we're going to specifically talk about the 3 principles in everyday life. So without further ado, and because how it applies to everyday life, and without further ado, I would like to welcome my co-host and one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever come across in my life, the beautiful Del Adey-Jones.
Thank you, Debbie. That's so sweet. Feeling is mutual.
Well, thank you. We do have fun here.
Yes,
we do. We do try to help people in all ways to live their best life.
Exactly.
And one of the things you do is help people through the 3 principle practice. Yes. Mm-hmm. But we got to start from the beginning because we do have people that haven't heard the story of how you grew up and why you were where you're at today. So,
well, it was, I'll give a brief version because some people might be sick of hearing it by now, including myself.
No.
So, no, I had a really unconventional upbringing. I grew up in North Wales. I was the product of an affair that my mother had with my father. And back then it was in 1959. And these days nobody would even bat an eyelid. But back then it was a little bit sort of, scorned upon, and we were, named things like illegitimate, which when you break that word down, it's like, not legitimate? Where did that come from?
Yeah, when you go to the definition, that could put you off to the side a little bit. Yeah.
And I definitely, I sort of took that word as well. That was the nicer word. The other word was the B word. And I just thought it meant something about me that I didn't have as, a right to be on this planet as much as other people. And it definitely affected how I felt about myself,
Absolutely.
The choices I made. And, it impacted me.
Yeah, when we had Dr. Meg Hayworth on a few weeks ago, she talked about things like that. Those
Yeah.
traumas in our childhood, they manifest later in life, and they
Absolutely.
turn into chronic illness and all kinds of
well,
things.
Just chronic low self-esteem was my
Well,
story.
that's an illness in
Yeah.
itself, absolutely,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
that can stir things up and make you sick from the
Yeah.
inside out.
So basically, yeah. So I just I'd always been on a path of back in those days, self-improvement. How can I make myself better? How can I feel better? And it just took me down.
Why do you think that is? Where do you, I mean, is it from your surroundings? I mean, you have lots of brothers and
Oh
sisters.
no, it was just I knew I wasn't functioning very well in the world. I
Okay.
knew there had to be an answer. There had to be
Interesting.
a better way. Oh no, I was
At a young
really-
age, very young.
No, I'm talking about when I started getting on this path of so-called self-improvement.
okay.
No, at a very early age, I knew I was shy. I said I was shy, but I think it was more shame. I just sort of kept my head down, didn't want to take up too much
makes me sad.
space. It's back then now, and thank God I
Yeah.
don't believe that anymore.
And you're doing all the
But,
work that's,
yeah. But there was a point in my life where I entered into therapy. Just things were falling apart around me. I mean, as I shared, around 19 years of age, I really didn't think I wanted to be on the planet anymore. It just seemed overwhelming, and I didn't feel equipped. Oops! Oh my goodness! I have just disconnected myself from my headset. Putting it back in here. There we go. So there was lots of factors coming into play that I was not the healthiest person I could be at that time.
Right.
So I started looking into all sorts of different modalities of spiritual understandings and therapy, and it all definitely helped. I mean, I would even say, I ended up doing a master's in spiritual psychology, and as I said, 30 plus years of therapy. Everything helped. But it was only when I came across this understanding. Well, actually, I have to retrack back, because I first came across it about 11 years ago when I was going through my divorce, and it was a pretty, very, very hard time in my life, as it is for most people.
Had you gone through the spiritual psychology?
Yes.
You had.
I was in the
so that's
midst-
when you heard
yes,
about it.
I was in the midst of doing my master's. I was also, again, I'd been in therapy for years, so I had a lot of support and a lot of help in handling a quite a difficult situation. But I read a book at the time. I came across a book called Stop Thinking, Start Living, and it was so helpful. I mean, it absolutely impacted me so much. But the man that wrote it was Richard Carlson, before he wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and all those other books. And I just knew that this one book was so pivotal in helping me calm my mind and deal with the situation I had to deal with. And but it didn't reference the three principles, so I didn't know where else to go and expand on this understanding and deepen the understanding.
Right.
So
To be able to apply it.
yeah, but I highly recommended this book to many people and said, "Oh, it's an amazing book."
Yeah.
And then
Well, it started you on a path.
It definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
it lit
me.
it lit a fire for
Well,
sure.
it added to what I already knew. I just didn't know that I could deepen in it. And then it was the funniest thing. It was on this show, on our show, we had a guest, Betsy Russell, who was talking about the three principles. And I'm thinking,
Remember that?
and I was like, Betsy, I know this. I know this stuff. So after that, I went and sort of looked up Richard Carson to see if he had in fact been a student of Sydney Banks and the three principles, and he had. In fact, actually, his father was a friend of Sydney Banks. So he grew up in that environment. So to him, it was just a way of life, not
That's right.
necessarily
It's
something to learn.
Yeah, it's like a language. If you
Yeah,
grew up with it, it's
exactly,
second nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so that's how I got really reintroduced to it a couple of years ago. And when I just went, oh my gosh, this is for me. This really makes sense. It's had the biggest impact out of anything I've ever done before, and I've done everything, every different spiritual modality.
Yeah. Well, sometimes
therapy.
it takes figuring out, a
Something just
few
clicks.
different, trying everything
Yeah.
until something clicks.
Yeah.
And this obviously
And as I
did.
said, everything led to that point. There
Yeah.
was so much help, but this was just the cherry on top of the.
Yeah, I've seen this
Yeah.
because I've been around in the last 3 years with you, our show being the last 2 of those 3 years. And I've seen you working your way
Yeah.
into it and seeing how it's clicked.
Yes.
So I've been a witness.
No, exactly. And
to-
everybody, thank goodness, my beautiful, loving partner, he is like, I just love being around you this last year or two.
Yeah.
And my
'cause
children
the shift.
too. Yeah, my children. I mean,
Of
I think
course.
they just see that I'm less reactive. Not that I was terribly reactive, but
I don't think you
it's
were.
so much just sort of rolls off now. It's just like if I find myself getting, upset or agitated by something, I have the awareness of the three principles, which is it's just a thought. So I should probably give a little bit more
I was going to
background.
say, we
those-
got to go back to the
Yeah.
beginning of.
And I'm not going to go too deeply into it. There is another show that we did together where I do the introduction to the principles if people want a deeper understanding. This is more just the practical application of them in everyday life, because it's, so many people say, oh yeah, I get it, but it doesn't apply in this way.
No,
So
but I
want
could think it could apply to every decision you
does.
make and
Well, yeah.
every
area
every
of your
direction
life.
you take
Yeah.
and all that.
So putting it briefly, what the three principles points to is that we grow up believing that we are just basically living in a world that exists, a real world that we're all just playing a part in, and that all our feelings come from events that are happening from the outside world, whether it's circumstances or people. So we can say something like, oh God, I'm so happy right now because I've got this great holiday I've just booked, going to the Caribbean.
Right.
Or I feel happy right now because I've found the love of my life, and or I've just had a job promotion, or I've just.
God, I'm going to check those two boxes because those both sound pretty good to me right at the moment.
I know, exactly. And they are. I mean, our world impacts us.
Well, it
doesn't-
manifests. It makes you feel good when you think about
Well,
that
that's-
person or that place that you're
but
going
you just
to
put
be.
your finger on it. It's when you think about it. It's not the actual person or the event. It's the thought, and then whatever that thought is,
It's what you put on it.
It creates the emotion. So the same thing, like our parents would innocently say to, I know my mum would innocently say to me, "You're driving me crazy," or "Stop doing that, you're upsetting me," and we keep getting these messages that we cause feelings in each other.
Oh, right.
Or that our
course.
environment,
All grew up that way.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
still use that
Exactly.
kind of language.
Yeah, people just think that, they don't recognize that the sort of in-between man is our thinking, that without a thought, we can't actually have an emotion. So we are impacted by our environment, but the environment does not cause that feeling in us. Our thinking about that situation or person creates our feeling.
Right.
So,
And what are the three principles?
yeah, you know what? We don't even the more and more I'm around these, people tend not to mention them for a reason.
Okay.
I'll mention them. It's
Because they
mind,
confuse.
Yeah, mind, consciousness, and thought.
Thought.
And then people start saying, "Well, what's mind? What's consciousness? What's
And
thought?"
they want a really hardcore definition.
And then we
for
get
it.
stuck
Yeah.
in our heads, and
Then we use the
well, we get lost in our heads.
Yeah.
And what this understanding keeps pointing to is the feeling, not the head. So, not your intellect. So the more that people try and understand it on an intellectual level, the more they miss out
more they
on,
get
on what it is.
confused. Yeah.
So the most important thing to realize is, number one, that our feelings are not created by our external circumstances or by people. They're created by our thoughts. Direct correlation to our thought is our feeling. And then the other really important factor to know and understand is that we are all connected to this, what we call the intelligence behind life, life force, wisdom, insight. This river flows through us, and it flows through every single person on this planet. There's an energy that we all come from. We're all made of this energy. Nobody has more access to this energy than anybody else. It's that we call it the formless before the form. The form is us as people in a physical world with physical things. But there's an energy behind everything, even this computer, this water bottle, you and I, we're all just molecules of energy. And we're all made up of the same energy. So,
But okay, so I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So that energy that we're made up of, everything that
Yeah.
surrounds us, because people on a daily basis are surrounded by different things and different types of energy, does that create the different welling up of your thoughts within you based on what you're subjected to?
That's interesting. Actually, our thoughts, nothing creates our thoughts. Those thoughts are just energy that rushes through us all day long. We get anywhere from 60 to 90,000 thoughts coming through us.
Amazing. When you've said that before, and I
know.
was like, wait, what?
Yeah, and they're not specific to us. I mean, we might notice some reoccurring ones, but they are, I'm happy, I'm sad, that's good, that's bad, I like that, I don't like that. Did you, all these thoughts
Constant,
just constantly going through us. And they are not unique to us. Everybody has them. We might sort of, depending on our environment, hone in on certain thoughts and keep seeing them and repeating them. But it's like, when you decide to buy a new car and you're looking around, you think, I think I fancy a BMW. And then every car you see on the street is a BMW.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you change
you're
your mind.
Single focused at that
exactly.
point. Yeah.
So that can happen with our thoughts.
Yeah.
We can actually get, as you said, single focused on them. And so we tend to notice them coming around and around. But if we practice what we do in the 3 principles, which is to not judge our thinking, to not try and control our thinking, to just literally witness it, all those thoughts just pass through us. And some of the more negative thoughts tend to stick around a little longer, I think. And I think that's to do with a survival mechanism. I think we tend to sort of, we think if we grasp onto something that's scary and try and figure it out, then it's going to be less scary. And all we're doing is putting energy on it. We're making actually hang around a little longer than it needs to.
Well, we're trying to make excuses for it and give it less life to make us angry or sad or whatever the emotion that's going to be attached to it. We want to delineate it, deplete it a little bit. So we'll give it more energy, I would think.
And as soon as you put anything you focus on grows. Anything that you
this is the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Exactly. So it sticks around. So I wanted to, for me, when I had this understanding, one of the biggest shifts in me, I would say, is like I used to want to be more confident. And for me, confidence was something I kept thinking I was going to get on the outside. If I take another class, another certificate, another training, another this, I will become more confident.
Right.
And it seemed to be this bottomless pit. I just kept putting, one thing on top of another.
Yeah, and then it starts to get kind of confusing, and
it was I just realized it wasn't
a lot of different directions.
There was never this place where I thought, okay, I'm here, I'm ready, I can do this. And what this understanding brought to me was that it's nothing on the outside was ever going to make me confident, and that it was actually by slowing down, not listening to those insecure thoughts, that I would actually drop into this very natural state of well-being, confidence, which is all our birthright. We all have that. But we get so hijacked by our thinking and placing the emphasis on the outside world of this will make me feel more confident, that we miss out on what's actually already a natural born state, which is to be happy.
And we don't grab it and take a hold of it because we are almost paralyzed by the thoughts that
and we don't even have to grab it and get hold of it. It's there constantly running through us all day long. When we quieten the mind and stop listening to our thoughts, we naturally drop into that space that's always within us. It's nothing to find, nothing to get. It's just constantly there. And when you tune into that, it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
This is powerful.
This is
because it has changed your life for the better, like we were saying.
Yeah, 100%. But it was not because I did any more self-improvement or any more things on the outside.
Because it's different from the law of attraction, right?
It's very different.
How so?
Well, people think when they hear the word thought, they think, oh, yeah, I know. If I have positive thoughts, I'll attract positivity. If I just visualize something, I can manifest. And again, I think for me, and I'm not knocking it, I definitely did my fair share of the law of attraction and positive
vision
energy.
boards and
vision boards and sort of I am statements and what's the other one? Intentions.
Mantras,
intentions, and things like that. But what I really realized again, it's still almost like handing your power out to something on the outside. It's futurizing. It's like, I'll be happy when.
It's like the universe will take care of it.
Well, exactly. Or, no, I think it's even more of an ego trip. We think that we're doing it all. By my thinking positively, I'm going to gain this.
Yes, that's true.
So it's it's still motivated to achieve things on the outside to bring happiness.
Okay.
It's like, I'm visualizing the perfect partner. And so many people do that, and they're living in the future. They're thinking who the perfect partner is. How do I get them? I'll be so happy when I've got them. And they're missing out in being in
It
the
could be right in front of them.
right in front of you. And really, the less efforting you do, the less thinking that you are creating everything, the more that you really just sort of settle back into that place of incredible, number one, you're calm, you're happy, you're connected to who you are at the source. And that will attract your perfect partners. Not by having a vision board and by saying he's got to meet this requirement, this requirement, this requirement. That's keeping it all in the material and in the head. Whereas when you just settle back into that place of being completely happy and content in them now, then that's the most attractive thing in the world. People gravitate towards that.
So when it comes to mindfulness and utilizing, like I utilize that in my practice with my clients because I want them to be mindful of the food they're eating, how long they're chewing, how they're going to get their nutrients, the exercise they are or not doing. How does mindfulness, how is that different from the principles?
I mean, the principles, Sydney Banks in the 70s said, this is nothing new. He had something downloaded into him, or he had this epiphany, and it came through so simply, just so simply. And but what he shared was nothing different from a lot of mystics and sages and prophets or philosophers have said for thousands of years. So there are roots of it in a lot of Eastern spirituality and religions. Practices. And mindfulness really came from Buddhism. I mean, I'm not an expert on mindfulness, so I'm not going to start saying what it is and what it isn't. But what differs, or for what I see differs in mindfulness and the understanding of the principles, is that in mindfulness there's usually a practice involved, a tool, a technique, as in, constantly observing your thoughts and your feelings, and often meditation is involved. Whereas with the three principles, we don't give much credence to our thinking at all, in fact.
Because that's more, it's more forcing the issue when you're, which is
spending
kind of what I
more,
tell my clients
and
to
it's
do.
more staying up in that space of analyzing the thoughts rather than just relaxing and going, hey, thoughts come and go. The good ones are lovely, and, don't grasp onto them. I mean, this is similar to mindfulness in the sense that standing back and watching the thoughts flow through you. But it's also, and it's similar in the sense that there's a non-judgmental aspect to it, and there's a non-duality aspect to it. These are all similar things. But with the three principles, it's simply the awareness that our thinking is just something that constantly happens through us. It goes up and down and up and down. Naturally, it's going to move on. Even the thoughts we don't like, they're going to move on at some point. And so we try not to get too much into the thinking of analyzing it and paying too much attention to it.
So, and when we pay too much attention to it in our everyday life, it can manifest to things that may not be so good, like things like stress and addiction and anger and depression.
Well, I'm going to go through
and
these.
Can we go through those?
Exactly.
Yeah.
One by one.
One by one. Because
I
if we stress and anxiety, if we
stress
start
and anxiety,
there.
so many people in this very fast-paced Western, culture that we live in of accumulating and getting things and our self-esteem.
Social media comparing ourselves to the haves and the have-nots,
Exactly. And that's actually a condition now. It's
It
like,
is.
Facebook envy is a
huge
psychological condition.
Especially with our millennials.
Yes, and for
younger.
us older ones too.
Yes.
That do the same thing we do. We see everybody's, holidays. We see their gorgeous photographs of themselves, not really realizing they've taken 50 photographs and only put the best one up.
Right.
As we are guilty of.
Yes.
We do
know
the
how
same.
that works. Yeah.
But so stress and anxiety, so many people say, yes, but, I'm anxious or I have stress because of my job, my family, my environment. And they will list all these things and it feels very, very real. And some people handle stress better than others, and some people are just whipped up constantly. And what they don't realize is, I'll use my little example here, my little snow globe.
Snow globe.
So really, when
that.
we're experiencing stress and anxiety, we're just really in the midst of a thought storm. I mean, that's what it's
And
like.
there's
when
the
you're-
storm,
There's the storm.
the chaotic storm.
Yeah, and those all those little sort of lovely sparkly bits, they demonstrate our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when we're stressed, we try and think our way out of a stressful situation. We plan, we strategize, we're constantly
things running through.
ruminating.
And they make it, one makes the other worse, and it's just this,
Exactly.
again, snowball effect,
Snowball
you know,
effect, exactly,
which
and
makes
it's-
it
yeah,
into something so much worse than it
well,
has to
because
be.
they can't think clearly.
That's
They
right.
feel that life is overwhelming, and then it can lead to anxiety attacks. And once you in an actual anxiety
Panic
attack,
attacks,
it's it's a panic attack.
Yeah,
It's-
they
it's-
physically
it's-
manifest
exactly,
themselves. Yep,
because
yep.
then the brain
Cold
chemistry,
sweats, nausea.
and well, because it's a
headaches.
physiological reaction
That's
to this anxious thinking. Not for everybody, but it's certainly there's a
No,
beginning
I know
to it.
a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
You know.
So what we would say, with this understanding is that the last place you want to hang out is in your head. The last place you want to do is try and figure out what's causing the stress and anxiety. The more you can just know that you're in the midst of having a lot of feelings, they're coming fast and furious, the more you can just settle down inside of you. Because when you settle down, that's when you access that innate wisdom. That's when you get fresh thought. I mean, up here, they say that up here is, all my wires here tangling, up here is like a computer. This has got so much data programmed in it. It's usually old stuff that you're rehashing, rethinking about. Or when you're up here too, you're either in the past or in the future. You're hardly ever in the present moment when you're spending time up
This
here
is true.
in your mind. So if you can just step back and go, oh, wow, I'm in the midst of a thought storm right now. It will pass. And you just sort of breathe and settle down. You will be amazed at the thinking that is constantly moving through you. But this is the fresh thought and the new ideas and the wisdom that is only yours. Nobody else can tell you what is the right choice to make. And a lot of anxious, stressful people keep asking for advice and they're getting all this input from different people. But if they just settle down and listen to their own inner guidance, their own inner wisdom that's specifically just for them, they will, this is the receiver. I point to my stomach when I talk about the heart area or the solar plexus. This is like a receiver. So this is where you'll go, oh my God, I hadn't thought of that. Where did that thought come from?
Yeah.
These are the wonderful, fresh thinking that can really help guide you. If you're in a stressful situation or in an environment, they can help guide you and you can stay centered and stay calm. But hanging out in that thought storm, trying to figure it out ourselves is just not going to get you anywhere.
So what technique or what's a tool to get rid of all that?
Well, as we say in the principles, there are no techniques and no tools.
Okay.
The only thing, and a lot of people, they get an uncomfortable feeling or they feel yucky or they're emotionally feeling down. That to me, I say that's your friend. That's your
wake-up call.
That's the wake-up call.
Snap you out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what it does is it doesn't feel like it's snapping you out of it. It usually feels like it's dragging you underwater.
No, I know,
that emotion.
but it's saying to you,
It's just
snap out of it.
Yeah,
is
it's
kind
to
of what I
me,
meant.
it's
Yeah.
just like an inner warning alarm system. Like if you feel yucky right now, it's because you've got some yucky thinking going on. So I normally hear sort of when things are good, we don't need to pay attention to anything. You feel good, you're happy, you're peaceful, you're having a wonderful life. It's usually when we feel not so good that we pay attention.
Yeah.
So
So there
there's-
are those that pay attention to when things are going really well, they start looking to the future and
Well-
they start saying, I don't think this is sustainable. It's not going to last. And
That's just a thought.
Yeah, that's just a thought.
That's
but
just a thought
yeah.
that came in. And instead of going, oh, that's an interesting thought, move on, or
Yeah.
it will move on its own, you go, oh, God, what does this mean? Oh, gosh, should I be aware? And how will I survive?
Yeah, that gives it life.
Yeah. If I think that outside thing is the one that's bringing me this happiness, if that outside thing goes away, like your job or your partner or something else like that, how will I survive? So that's just starting to believe negative, insecure thinking again. So again, as soon as you start feeling not so good, you're going, oh, I must have had some weird thought there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You don't have attached to it and go, where did it come from? Is that an old thought? Did it come from childhood? We don't give it any energy. We just
Okay.
go, oh, that was an interesting thought.
Love it.
Move on.
Love it. Just move
So
on.
that's the only technique you really need to remember is, and it's not a technique, it's just like when that internal alarm system, which is a yucky feeling, you know, you start to feel it, that's just a reminder that you're getting lost in some thoughts there. And
Right.
to just, whatever is causing that yucky
Don't
feeling,
give it.
it's going to pass.
So how
Sometimes
would
they hang
go ahead.
around for a bit longer is what I'm saying. And the objective of this is it's absolute. What I love about this community is everybody's so funny and happy and raucously share
We're all
our
doing the same practice.
but we
yeah.
also we share how human we are, and there is the human condition is to keep forgetting. So we find ourselves in a real moment where we're like, but it is something on the outside, and then we go, oh no, it's not, and then we laugh about it because so we're not expecting perfection. We're not looking for never to feel bad again or never to be wrapped up in our thinking. It's what we're looking for is the resilience to bounce back.
Good.
Is to not
have it
spend too
and
much
be
time hanging out in
there.
that area and too miserable or attached to, feeling that you're right or that, something like that. And say in an argument with a partner, if you're having very strong feelings like this person is a jerk and, why am I with them? Just be aware that if you feel a bit, as I say, yucky, you're having some thinking, don't take it too seriously. And it'll often pass and you'll go, wow, why did I get so caught up in that?
Exactly.
So it gives you time to be more responsive and less reactive. Because you almost give yourself a timeout. You do really
right,
do.
take a breath kind of thing.
And it is. It's like, wow,
Let the thought go.
yeah.
Let
or
it out.
Or just let it, or if it's hanging around longer than you like, just know not to operate from that place. Because with
No better.
just because you know that if you're in a low mood, which is where you are when you've had some negative thinking, that nothing good comes from acting from that place.
Right.
Just wait for it to pass.
Makes so much sense.
And you'll calm down and then get that insight, get that wisdom on how to proceed.
So how would you apply 3 principles to facing terminal illness?
Well,
'Cause that's a big one.
It is a big one. I personally have a friend right now who is a 3 principles practitioner who is stage 4 breast cancer and has been dealing with this for a very long time. And I was just at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and something was brought up which I found fascinating, and I want to share right now because this applies in so many areas.
Absolutely.
But they were saying the but the model of the 7 stages of grief. Let me briefly, it's like shock and disbelief, denial, anger, bargaining, guilt, depression, and then acceptance and hope. And those are, the Kubler-Ross 7.
Yes, aware. of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've all been told this is the natural cycle of any type of shock or being given news that is, and this can apply to people, when their partner says, I want to have a divorce, or when the doctor says to you, I'm sorry, but you have, cancer, or these situations where the grief process can come
Losing
in.
a loved one.
Losing a loved one, exactly. This can be across the board. And I think I'm not belittling this, and I'm not belittling the cycle, but what this understanding gives you is it gives you the power to not get stuck in those 7 stages. I mean, we're told it goes like this, it goes down and like that, and then it starts coming up again. Well, with this understanding, you will still have those feelings and those emotions, but you don't have to dip down so far. You can actually go, oh, and then you can cycle out of it much quicker. And it's not denial. It's just the understanding that when you're in any of those places, to not wallow in there and feel like you're helpless and you can't do anything to get out of it. Well, this is just natural that I'm angry right now, so I'm just going to be angry because it's natural. Whereas we would say, well, yeah, it's natural that you're having thoughts that you feel something's upset you. You're having those thoughts. You feel angry right now, but the simple awareness that the emotion is coming from the thought, not the external circumstance, will give you the freedom to go, well, how long do I want to hang out here? Knowing that thought will pass.
So that would actually put you on a better road to wellness. Or to dealing, because then you're sort of clear-headed to think about the steps that do need to be taken to getting well.
Yeah.
And you have a more positive place, which, as we know, having positivity thoughts and more happiness and joy in your life can actually heal you
Absolutely.
from an illness.
I mean, they say, love and laughter are the biggest healing factors.
Absolutely.
So the more that you can stay, and it's not a fake positive, psychology, which again I studied. And I told you, I think it depressed me because I wasn't as positive as I thought I should be, and I got into judgment, which was funny. So, but this is just a natural way to understand that we go through these cycles. And take somebody that's been given this awful diagnosis of, you have terminal cancer, or now that person might have a certain amount of time to live. Say they were given 6 months. Now they could, without this understanding, they could just stay in a really, really bad state of, well, it's terminal, why bother? And they could lose out on even that 6 months with loved ones, with family, their own quality of life. But because they're in their heads, panicking, futurizing,
all those things,
going into the past, regretting things,
which will
all
make
of that
them give
stuff.
up. Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas if they have this understanding, they're much more present in the present moment. They're much more naturally optimistic because they cycle through that obvious depression and hurt and anger and upset and all those things. They cycle through it faster. They're more present to spend whatever time they do have here with loved ones.
Right, in a positive, loving place.
In a positive, loving place.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is the... it's certainly a place I would rather hang out in if I was in that situation. And as I say, my friend is. And
she's hanging out.
She's hanging out, and she's having incredible conversations with her children. She has a young boy who's still only, I think, 15, who is, handling this very well because of his understanding too. And the other thing I want to talk about with death and dying is that, again, as I said before, we are all made of energy. We don't really die. We come out of the physical form when we die, but our energy remains here. And,
We've seen that. We've had enough intuitives and psychics on our show to know.
In my own experience of having 3 family members die within this last year, I don't mourn at the same level maybe as somebody that doesn't have any understanding of a spiritual nature of life, or because for me, I just, jokingly say my mum doesn't have to get on an airplane anymore, or neither do I to be with her. She's with me constantly when I want to feel her presence. I mean, I can just conjure her up. I can feel her. I can smell her. I can hug her in my...
I can attest to that. I lost my dad when I was 20, and he was only 46. So this was 40 years ago for me. Yeah. And I can bring him back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can, and I just give it a good thought, or all of a sudden something will be, and I'll be, oh, Daddy, you're there,
exactly.
And I know you do that with your mom.
Yeah.
And my mom passed away a lot more recently. Same thing, but my dad has been around for a long time because he wasn't there to walk me down the aisle, but yet he was, His father walked me down the aisle. He wasn't there for when my children were born, but yet he was, He guided me and helped and said, I just knew it. He knew, he used to say things to me like, I know you're going to make something with yourself. I know you're going to go to college. And there were 4 of us, and I'm the only one with a college degree that had earned a living, had lived a good life and all of that. And, what's to say what's a good life? But he was right, and keeps giving me that tap on the shoulder that says, I'm here. Yeah. I see, even during the tough times, and I've had some tough times. Yeah,
and that is exactly. And there's times when... when my mother first passed over, it was a little raw, and I would think about her, and I could feel my feelings. Sometimes it was like, when I go, oh, I'm in a little bit of a low mood today, and I've got a feeling if I keep thinking about her, I could go on a downward spiral.
Down.
So I would just sort of go, okay, she came into my mind.
Mm-hmm.
She'll pass on again. And whether there are other days when she pops to my mind, or I see a picture in my house or next to my bed and things, and I'll go, and I'll indulge those thoughts because they feel so good.
Yeah.
But I
So
know,
you know when to give it good energy.
I
and
just
not
know that
to-
they're thoughts.
Yeah.
And as I say, depending on my emotional state, you know, sometimes you can have a thought storm that can just take you down and down and down that rabbit hole. Everything starts looking worse and worse and worse. So again, those are the times where I'm going, oh, I'm not going to indulge thinking about her too much. But on the good days, when I'm already feeling good, I do indulge the thoughts.
I'm curious how, you know, so that we sort of have control, but what if you're in an instance, like a dangerous incident, where you're being bullied or someone's got a gun? I mean, how do you? We're now in the fight or flight mode, and we don't. How can we apply the principles to those situations?
Well,
I'm
first of
wondering.
all, I'll put
The bullying is separate than
yeah.
being threatened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so bullying, for instance, you know, to understand basically that those who are bullying are just believing their thoughts in their moment. And for whatever reason, they're having fearful thoughts where they feel they need to dominate another person. Because it's only out of fear that you would ever try and belittle or dominate or control
Right.
another human being. They're coming from a place of fear. And ignorance, for that matter, because
time.
if we all understood that we are all equal, yes, of course, when we come into the human form, we come out at different sizes, different heights, and different things. But at our essence, every single one of us is equal. And if all the world realized that,
None of this would be
we
going
wouldn't
on.
be
what's
having
going
bullying.
on.
We would not be having hate crimes. We
Yes,
would
shootings. and-
exactly. We wouldn't exactly. That's why I feel so passionately about getting this understanding into our school system, which there is already. It's happening.
Oh, really?
Oh, huge.
Okay.
We have it in the prison systems, in our schools, in the gangs in Chicago. The 3 principal practitioners have been working with them for the last, I think it's over 3 years anyway. And I know that they've had significant changes in how gangs relate to
Wonderful.
each other.
Love
so
it.
with this understanding, it's so, and then again, for the people that are being bullied, if they, again, didn't have this thinking that I am weaker, there's something wrong with me, this is why this is happening, and I keep finding myself in this place.
They
If
wouldn't be such a victim?
They wouldn't be, they wouldn't, number one, feel victimized. That starts there. They would be able to say, okay, this thinking is not helpful. This is not true. It's just thoughts that are coming through my head. They don't belong to me. They don't define me. I'm not less than. I'm not a weakling, or I'm not, whatever the thought is that's going through their head that's making them feel even worse in a bullying situation. They would understand, they would go, wait a minute, and they would understand that, hey, I'm equal to anybody else. They would be able to stay calm and not reactive in that moment, and they would be able to get fresh thought and wisdom that can guide them
Out of a dangerous situation.
Yeah, guide them out of a dangerous situation, inform them on how to deal with it in a very responsive manner as opposed to a reactive manner of either lashing back out or coming to school with a gun. I mean, so many of these young people that do these mass shootings have been bullied, and that's their way of regaining the power.
Right.
Again, misguided, assuming that some outside action is going to, level the playing field or something.
Right.
So it just is so important in all of these areas. Addictions, I wanted to touch on addictions. People, again, it's the same thing. We have a thought, whether we're depressed or we're, being traumatized as a child or something, or gone through some horrific things. The thinking around that we have, that, I must be damaged because of this, or I'm less than because of this, or I'm tainted for life, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
People that choose addictions are trying to get away from their thinking.
That's right.
That's all they're doing.
They're trying to numb it.
They're trying to numb
I
it.
see it in my practice
Yeah.
all the time. And I've worked
Exactly.
in the rehabs and
Yeah.
that, I've seen people just say things like people who overeat, I'll see them say things like, oh, I had a bad day, I had a fight with my boss. I deserve a piece of cake.
Well, exactly.
And
really what they're trying to do is calm that thinking, get away from that thinking. So they, again, misguided, are reaching out. This is water, by the way. But if I was, it's not later. But I'm just saying they immediately think, they don't realize that their feelings rather are coming from their thinking. So they reach for something, whether it's a chocolate cake or a glass of wine or some pills or whatever, and go, I'll take this and
make me
I
feel
will
better.
feel better. It's that
which is
out.
the total opposite
Yeah.
effect,
No,
actually.
Exactly. But we can't beat ourselves
Control
up for
it.
it. We can't.
Why?
Well, let me just make this point quickly
Okay.
because it's so important. Dr. Amy Johnson works a lot with eating disorders and habits. She calls them habits. Which is a lovely, gentler version. And what she says is rather than beat ourselves up, especially if we fall back into an outside-in thing to console us, she goes, recognize that as we're actually self-soothing, not realizing that we can self-soothe from within. So it's actually, at one point, it was made sense to try and calm ourselves down. But the only thing is there's a negative feedback from that. But she says that with this understanding, it's almost like the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg being the behavior or call it the addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, food, whatever it is. But the old model of dealing with addictions is to feel bad if we slip rather than be understanding. And it's to chip away at that iceberg from the very top. Whereas she says that if we understand this understanding and we naturally start feeling better within ourselves, that sort of warms the waters, and those icebergs start to melt from the bottom up, and
Right.
they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we don't
You have to really literally start feeling again.
You've got to
have to be aware of your
but the
feelings.
feeling is knowing that whatever you're feeling will pass. If
Right.
you don't like the feeling, it'll pass. If it's good, it's probably going to pass too, but it's going to,
Yeah.
but to just not panic and try and control. And most people act out their addictions out of panic. They feel that they cannot stand this feeling. I've got to get away from it. And if they could just go, the feeling's going to pass. An addictive is
They literally are feeding their feelings.
Yeah.
With an addiction, whatever that addiction is.
Well, it is, and then you create
thinking
these
that-
neural pathways, and the more that you
And
have a negative feeling and you
that's
give it
a
a
habit.
drink, it's trod that it's like a field with long grass. The more you keep treading that same path, you've created a groove. But the more that you don't habitually sort of react to
anything.
that feeling by giving it a drink, the grass will grow again and it will weaken. That path will disappear eventually.
Wow, there's a powerful way to deal with addiction.
Yeah.
So the one thing, we have just a few minutes left, but and you touched briefly on it when we were talking about facing terminal illness, but also divorce and breaking up, which
Yes.
is so rampant
It
in
is.
everybody's life.
Exactly.
And me personally,
Yeah.
giving too much energy to something that's
Well,
been going on for a long time.
Yeah, and we also feel that, we take it personally. We feel that, sometimes, especially if our partners tell us that it's our fault and you've done this and you've done that.
Yeah.
Well, part of this understanding is that we are all walking around in our own separate realities. We all almost have like one of these bubbles on our
Yeah,
heads.
big time.
We see the world
Yeah.
through our lens, our thoughts. And so when somebody does, leave a marriage, a lot of the people that were left start feeling helpless, victimized. How couldn't I control this? How didn't I see it coming?
Start beating yourself up.
Beating yourself up, and this understanding really does help you understand that it is really, we all live in these separate realities, and that person made a choice given where their thinking was at that time, and it has no bearing on you. And so
Right.
we can't take it personally. We really can't. And so when we continue to torture ourselves with the what ifs and all of that thinking, we're doing that to ourselves.
I know. And it can manifest in so many ways. They always talk about like divorce or big breakups that, it's the divorce diet. A lot of my friends that have gone through breakups and especially divorce, automatically within 2 weeks loses 10 pounds and keeps it off for a while they're still kind of living. They're in that fight or flight kind of stress, adrenaline mode anyway, anxiety mode, which nothing is really working properly. So, it's so telling of how you can actually take control if you just stop and stop giving it life being
and again
angered.
This is not so that we can control, because quite honestly anything outside of ourselves, we cannot control anything outside in the world of form. We do have mastery on the inside, how we interpret things, that knowing simply, as
choice.
I said, that there is free will. I always say that anxiety and depression and negative thinking, that's like the neighbor that unannounced comes to your front door and knocks on the door, and she's a bit bothersome. She keeps doing it, and you can't control what's happening out on the street. People are going to come to that front door and knock on it. And those are our thoughts. They're going to come through. But I always say, I have control as to who I invite in.
Right. Whether you open that door or not.
And who I ask to stay the whole morning and give a cup of tea to.
Yeah.
You basically...
That's your choice.
Yeah.
And you make those choices.
That's where the free will is.
So we are running out of time, but I
as
know that you
always.
have words, but that's why we keep doing these. But I know you have words of wisdom for our
just a
audience
little.
based on everything we've discussed today.
So my main thing would be to say, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing wrong with you. Don't keep getting hooked into this self-improvement will get you somewhere. At your core, you are perfectly healthy and whole. Just as the body knows how to heal itself, our natural state, so does the psyche. If we don't try and control and manipulate and judge our thinking, the psyche will come back to its natural set point, which is just happiness. And, we look at little children.
I was going to say, it would be, we just go back to the beginnings and when we were kids and playing so mindlessly, literally just in our happiness.
Exactly.
And no inhibitions. That's what I love about kids. They just go run around, say what they want, when they want, how they want, and have fun.
And they feel their feelings.
Yeah.
So it's not that any feeling is bad, that they cycle through it really fast and they rebound. And they never sit in this ruminating, sulky place.
They fall, they get up and laugh again.
I'm talking about 2 or 3-year-olds before society has too
gets
much.
the hold and they start to manifest things, they hear things and they become sponges. But before that, they're in their own natural state.
And that's our
the
natural
best
state.
example is going back, because I always use that, how kids are formed through what we throw on them, because they were perfectly wonderful before we got a hold of them.
So we all have this perfectly wonderful little 2-3-year-old inside of us that can cycle and bounce back every time.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. Del, thank you.
Wonderful.
This makes a lot of sense, helps a lot of people.
Great.
So
Thank
you. I
you.
love that we do these shows. We're going to do one with me in a little
Yes,
while.
I think
We're
a
going to
week or
talk
2.
about adrenal fatigue and hormone imbalance. So
Fabulous.
it'll be a great show. All right. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Del.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week, 1 p.m. Del and Debi, Mind, Body, Soul. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.